Welcome. Today we've got Dante Fantauzzi from Toronto. He recently signed with the University of Alaska to play hockey. He's joining us today to talk about his recruiting journey.
Oh, no, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations. It feels pretty good to finally get the process in the rearview mirror and kind of get it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It's a process that you really take your time making a decision with, and me and my family are happy with what we made.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. What's on the bio?
I'm a 6'1" left shot defenseman. I play for the North York Rangers of the Ontario Junior Hockey League, and just went on my official visit to Alaska Anchorage and kind of fell in love with it up there, and just signed my NLI yesterday, so it's really exciting.
So obviously the recruiting process, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long. You have some highs and lows. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the struggles you may have had in the process and what maybe some of the high points were?
Some struggles or some low points, I guess you'd say, would be when sometimes the team's recruiting you and you might have a bad game next time they see you, and then next thing you know, they're not on your recruiting trail anymore, kind of thing. So stuff like that kind of has its ups and downs, where sometimes you catch a bad break and you lose the interest of a school, or sometimes you'll even go down to a school on an unofficial visit where there's no offer on the table, but you want to kind of check out the school, and then next thing you know, nothing kind of moves on from that point. So it's kind of just, you got to keep, you can't let your emotions get too high or too low, and you kind of just got to keep steadying the whole process and really believe in yourself that you can get a commitment, and it's coming, and it's definitely not something you need to rush.
In the process, how many schools did you get involved with, even from you sent an email to or got a letter from?
In high school, I was a smart student. I had a 4.0 GPA, so right away I kind of was sending emails to some Ivy League schools and stuff like that. And I think in total I sent emails to maybe 15 schools. You don't want to send emails to too many schools, because then it doesn't, as a player, you really want to make sure you're not just putting, it's nice to put your name out everywhere, but if you really show an interest in a school and you really want to go to a certain place, each email you send out wants to be kind of personalized. You want to talk about the conference, and you might even want to bring up I see you want this defenseman for this year or something like that. And I think that's pretty important to kind of look for. And so there's a couple, I'd say, and being in conversations with, probably not as much as you emailed, because some schools email you back, some schools don't, right? And
right.
It's kind of just a process like that. So in general,
Okay.
I don't know, it's probably 10, 15 plus schools that I was in conversations with, but not directly there's an offer on the table kind of thing. And I don't think that's the case with anyone where they have 15 offers, unless
right,
a for sure stud.
So tell me, as you look back at the recruiting process and where you ended up, what were some of the key things that you did that you think were the most important in landing that scholarship?
I think one thing that is important is, you gotta be a good person. I think when I was getting recruited, especially by Alaska Anchorage, they called people that they knew that knew me, and they really asked for opinions from people they trusted. How is this kid as a person? And I believe it's always good things happen to good people. So I think the most important thing. The second most important thing was be a guy that he's a good locker room guy, and a guy your coaches really enjoy having around. Playing junior hockey, you can easily be traded, and if you're not fit in a locker room, might be you that's shipped out. So I had the full confidence from my coaches when Alaska Anchorage called and they asked about me, and my coaches had nothing but good things to say about me, and that kind of goes along with being a good person. And I think the third thing is just training hard, making sure with your trainers you have good relations, and making sure they know that you're always there to work. And obviously there's times in the summer where you're training and you want to have fun, but when you're in the gym for that 2-hour period or whatever it is, you're really working as hard as you can, and you're always trying to get better. So those are three pretty important things.
So how did you start the recruiting process with some of the schools you talked about? Was it a phone call, an email? Did they initiate it? Did you initiate it? Did they see you at a camp? How did it start with some of the schools that were in there at the end?
A lot of junior hockey teams, all their games are filmed on this website called My Hockey TV or Hockey
Mm-hmm.
TV, and I think that's when I first got kind of looked at, and then um, it kind of happened where they called my video coach had a relation. He played college hockey with the assistant coach in Anchorage there, and it kind of started like that. It's kind of just one of those small world incidents, happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I got a phone call from them and just talked to them on the phone about how I was interested in playing Division I hockey and how I'd be interested in going up there. And one thing kind of led to another, and they kind of kept watching tape, and they liked me, and they ended up making me an offer. So,
As you walk through the process, and as you look back now, were there any things any mistakes you made along the way, or things you might have done differently that might have helped you in a unique way?
As a kid from Ontario, I think a lot of schools at a younger age, like they're scouting in the States more often because they don't think they're going to lose kids to the Canadian Hockey League or any major junior league in Canada, essentially. And I was a 5th round draft pick to the Ontario Hockey League, so I think being drafted high kind of made schools think like, oh, I think he'll play like in that league instead of kind of going to the NCAA. And, maybe I should have made it more clear that playing college hockey was like an end goal, but no, not. I don't think mistakes. I think it's a whole learning process, and you kind of just take it one step at a time. And you're never going to be perfect every single game. So maybe sometimes I got too down on myself and was too hard on myself because I thought people were watching. But for the most part, it's just kind of learning how to just play your game every night and making sure that you have confidence and knowing that like it's going to happen.
At what age did you start to think, "Hey, I can play at the college level and beyond"? When did that happen for you that you thought, "Hey, this is a possibility for me"?
I think it started pretty young. Once you start playing in like your Bantam year when you're 14, 15, and you're getting like recruited by like agencies, for example, for guys who want to go to like the major junior league. That's I think a big thing here. Obviously, you're not allowed to have an advisor if you take that college route. So it's kind of just like that's when.
So that young, that's pretty young.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, no, but it's all about kind of building relationships with like the people who are gonna be supporting you through your hockey career, kind of thing. And I think that's why they come so young, and at that age, you kind of got to realize, okay, like, do I want to do this or not? And if you're willing to make the commitment and you're willing to give up some going out in some summer nights with your buddies because you got to be in the gym at 7 in the morning, you kind of have to have that mindset from a young age. So that's when you kind of start learning.
Can you talk a little bit about the communication you had with schools? What was the first thing you did? Did they call you? Did you send an email? Did you text them? And what year did that start happening?
I think I started sending out emails when I was around 16, just to a couple different schools. Like I said, the Ivy Leagues being at a private school and having that 4.0 GPA, and I really thought like, okay, like maybe I got a better chance of going to one of these schools because my marks are so good, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like this year, I didn't have any conversation last year, my first year of junior or tier 2 junior hockey in Canada, and I think that was kind of like a frustrating kind of thing. But this year, I started getting phone calls. Like with Alaska, it happened pretty quick. It was kind of like a 3-week thing where they did their homework, and then they finally knew, like, okay, we're probably gonna give this kid an offer if we like this kid by talking to him on the phone. So that kind of happened pretty quickly. And
can you talk a little bit about the other schools that were maybe in the you were looking at, and campus visits? Did you get on campus at other schools, or were you able to get on campus at Alaska, seeing the distance there?
Yeah, I did my official visit in Alaska, and I fell in love with that school. And I think everything about it was kind of just a good fit for me, and I think that's a big thing. And I think like the first time I got that call from Anchorage, we didn't really know much about it, me and my family. So when we flew out there, we were like, okay, wow, like this isn't just like it's portrayed in the movies, like Alaska, like just a ton of snow and cold and no light. But the city was actually really nice, and no, I really like the facilities they had there, and they have a new coaching staff who's really bringing in the new mentality, and everything they had there is pretty elite stuff, and it's like a hockey market too. So my official visit went really well there, and that was a big reason why I was able to like kind of, or that's kind of why I wanted to sign that NLI and really be committed there, and excited to go there next year.
Tell me a little bit about, so for someone listening to this that maybe they're a freshman or sophomore, they've never been on a visit, can you describe how the visit works and what you did, and kind of walk me through the timeline?
Yeah, so we flew in that Saturday night, and then we got in pretty late, so me and my mom went up, and we kind of just went right to bed, and we knew we were meeting the coaches for breakfast the next morning. So we did that, and after we met the coaches for breakfast, we sat down, had our first kind of conversation of how the day was going to look like, and we went to the main arena, saw like the facilities in there, then went over to like the school, saw like the business school, and I actually got a chance to meet with the dean of business, which was pretty remarkable for me, and I think that was one thing that was pretty cool. Then we went over, we went for lunch, came back, saw the practice arena, and then all the practice facilities, and the weight room and the Alaska Airlines Center. Then we got to walk through like the student living area, and kind of just did a walk around campus, and I got to meet the director of athletics in Anchorage there, and then after like the whole day was kind of done, I saw everything. We went for our last dinner, and that was kind of just from after a whole day of talking hockey and talking about recruiting, it was kind of just a dinner for the coach to get to know me as a person, and having a good conversation with my mom, and I got to ask questions about them and their past being coaches. So it was a good day. It was a lot to take in, but I was really happy I got the opportunity to do it.
So talk to me about the coaches in the process here. How instrumental were some of your younger coaches as you played on some of the other teams in the actual recruiting process?
Yeah, I think a big thing. I think a coach makes a player, and to add it, there's certain things you can teach kids at a young age that you can't teach them when they're older, like where to be in a certain case or how to think the game. So I credit starting right from when I was young, obviously, my dad being like my first teacher of hockey and him talking to me after games, and then my coach is just from right away by Adam year when we went to the Ontario's, and like a guy like Tony Canati, who he was just coaching. Like we had coaches who coached like the kids on the team growing up, and we just had a really good group there. Guy like Luch Cugini, who I'm still close friends with his son, and Tony Canati, who I'm still close friends with his son Nicholas, and Vic Maya, who I'm still close with his son Thomas Maya, who's going to RIT next year, and Paul Iguana, whose son Anthony plays in the OHL. And we just had a really good group, and that team ended up going on to win 7 championships, and I was lucky to be a part of 3 there. And then
fantastic.
Moving on up, I was taught by someone like Anthony Cirelli, who he played in Europe and played on the Italian national team, as well as a guy like Matt Hallett, who was a scout in the OHL for a long time. And then finally, my last coach in minor hockey was a man named Ken Strong, and played in the NHL for the Leafs for a couple games, and broke many records in Europe playing. And he kind of was like the final guy who taught me how I had to think to make it to the next level. And I think I credit all those guys, and then now my junior coach was actually my coach in Pee Wee, and Jeff Schmogi, and I think he really brings the best out of every single player every night. And him and Sean Teagle, Rob Pearson, John Neville, all my coaches in North York, they're so instrumental to help me as a player.
So in the actual recruiting process and dealing with the coaches there at the University of Alaska, how did that work? Were you talking with the recruiting coordinator or position coach, or did you deal directly with the head coach? How did that progression work?
Yeah, so I actually got a phone call from the assistant coach, and that's kind of how it all started up. And the assistant coaches, I think, really take like the reins on the recruiting process, and the head coach kind of looks at film and gives like his okay kind of thing. But no, it was. I think that's how it kind of worked. It was more the assistant coaches that did the recruiting, but on my official visit, I got to meet the head coach, sit down with him, and he even called me once before I went up on my official visit. So I think all of them kind of pitched in a little bit and kind of wanted to for me to get introduced to them and make sure I was comfortable with each and every one of them.
Did you use any recruiting services in your recruiting process to kind of post videos or to interact with coaches like NCSA, Recruit Me, Be Recruited? I mean, there's 1,000 different services out there.
I think recruiting services are pretty big for like guys who like play football who use like that Huddle app kind of thing when they get to really lock in on their video. But I think with coaches in junior hockey, they kind of like look at like our game film that they already see, so I didn't really have to use any of those websites or have to really pay for that. I just the eligibilitycenter.com, which makes sure like you're eligible to play college or in college, for example. That was the only one I kind of used.
So you didn't have to make highlight videos or recruiting videos. That's already done through the TV services that are recording your games.
Yeah, I think so. And like my video coach, I think he might have broken down one just because he knew the assistant coach in Anchorage was there. But other than that, I think they did kind of their homework, and I think that's kind of how the year was going. A lot of coaches like seeing a player in like person in a game, see his habits and stuff like that. And I think that's a big thing too. And then you might get lucky and they might like you on the ice, and then they might jump at you or talk to you after a game kind of thing. But no, I didn't use any of those recruiting websites or apps that a lot of other sports might use.
So in that world, are there showcases? Do you do camps? Do you do that kind of thing?
So each college has like a couple camps in the summer. I did one at Harvard when I was 16, but other than that, I didn't do any. It's more about a lot of guys with like their American citizenship might do like that USHL camp or the USA hockey camps for like the Five Nations tournament tournaments they have down there. But I didn't really need to do that. In the summers, I'm training a lot. They have the OJHL Governor Showcase in Buffalo, which a lot of scouts are at. It's kind of 2 games that like you play, and those kind of fill the ranks. And every day, I got lucky this year in North York. We were winning a lot, so a lot of scouts were at our games, and
yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, and we were up to like I think 4th in the country just last week. So I think every time you win some games, it helps a lot and kind of brings people in. But in the most part, no, I didn't really go down for like different showcase events. I know guys who have committed out of those camps and like the USHL camps, but no, I didn't do that myself.
So let me ask you, as you were looking at your options, what were some of the factors that you looked at to say, hey, Alaska, that's the best fit for me?
I think one thing you got to look at is the schooling. What are they off? Like, what does the school offer you, and what degree can you get, and how valuable is the degree? With Alaska, right when I went there, they told me guys in there, like they have an MBA program where it's partially online and partially in class. So they told me that I could get that while I was playing hockey there, which was pretty huge for me and my family to talk about. And I think that was pretty important. Another thing was the coaches, like how do you see yourself coming in as a freshman? How much are you going to play kind of thing? And then I think at the end of the day, do you have a good offer or not, kind of thing. Because if guys are playing like 90%, I'm sure they're not going to commit there to compare to a place where they're paying like 50% or less, kind of thing.
So if you were talking to a younger player, freshman, sophomore, who's getting ready to walk through this process, what advice would you have for them about the recruiting process?
I think some advice I have would just try to take it day by day. Don't think one bad game is going to ruin your chance of getting a scholarship. And for example, baseball player, don't think one bad pitch is going to kind of ruin everything for you. Scouts are there and they know you're not perfect, and one scout may fall in love with you, and that's kind of how you may get a scholarship. And stay off social media when looking at guys committing. It's gonna get you upset sometimes when you think, oh, I could be better than this player. Like, I don't get how he got a deal. A lot of it is just being in the perfect place and a perfect time. And I think if you just don't look at the negatives and you keep being positive and you believe in yourself, then it'll happen. And just gotta kind of take it day by day.
But did you have any funny recruiting stories or interesting stories that you kind of came across in your travel?
And I think just on the plane ride home, we had like a 4-hour stopover in Minneapolis, and I put in some headphones because my mom was falling asleep. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of wait it out. And I was listening to a podcast, and next thing you know, it's like 2.5 hours later, and I just wake up and we're still at the airport. So no, that'd be the only kind of funny thing is passing out in our stopover. And it was
afterwards, just kind of with all the pressure and everything over on the way back, you mean?
Yeah, you're so tired from a long day.
Yeah, for sure.
Really good.
So is there anything in the recruiting process that was kind of important that we haven't covered, or you think someone would benefit from knowing about through your process? Any, like phone calls or emails, texts, or conversations, or?
No, I think one thing that's really important is just you never kind of know who's going to know someone in the hockey world. So I think it's just really important for everyone, especially parents, to make sure you're treating everyone right and make sure you're not talking bad about anyone. You never know what's going to come back at you, and you never know what's going to benefit you in the future. I know people who could have said something bad, and it could have ruined their reputation with one person who knew the scout, and then next thing you know, you're off a recruiting trail. So I think that's a big one, and kind of for parents, just being able to support your kids doing anything. Like this year, like before I was almost about to not play and just head to school in Ontario, and kind of just try to play for like that team, the CIS there, which wouldn't have given me as much of a shot as Division I. I would have had to I wouldn't have gotten a scholarship out of it. So I think it's just a patience thing, and I hope parents like have a kind of plan out. My plan was to take this year off, and if I didn't get the scholarship, then apply to university again in Ontario and go. So it's kind of just, it may be a longer process than you'd have liked it, but if your kid wants to do it, then have a plan and make sure you guys are all on the same page, and it makes the process a whole lot easier when a player knows he's got the support of his parents when every time he steps out on the field or on the ice. So,
is the sports, is it run in your family? Did your mom or dad play athletics?
My family came from not as like wealthy parents, I guess I would say, and they didn't really get the opportunity I got to play sports. But apparently my dad was always a pretty good athlete, and my mom was apparently a good volleyball player in high school, but not to the extent that me and my siblings play sports at. So I kind of just credit them with everything.
So you have brothers and sisters that play as well?
Yeah, I got a brother who plays prep hockey with St. Mike's, and I got my sister who's playing soccer, and just kind of having fun with that right now.
Excellent, man. Good for you. Well, Dante, I appreciate you spending some time with us and sharing some stories about your recruiting process. I wish you all the luck at the University of Alaska, and I hope you have a good career.
Okay, thanks so much for the talk.